All right, let's move on to talk about Romelu Lukaku, something else we were talking about yesterday. Obviously, you were here, Stevie, for this conversation. A few more updates we've had to the story of Inter pulling out of negotiations here. One are the reports that Lukaku was very unhappy that he wasn't getting started in the big games, especially the Champions League final. The other is that Inter are absolutely furious with the actions that we're hearing these reports of. What have you seen today, Gab?
All right, so there's a couple of things that we know for sure. Inter are very unhappy with Lukaku. All these stories that are in the Italian press today, they all come, it's Inter's version of events. We know for sure that Chelsea are very unhappy that he's still there because they had an agreement in principle to shift him to Inter, 35 million euros, rising to 40 million with bonuses. Inter are unhappy based on the version we see out there with the fact that kind of Lukaku's agent kind of stopped answering their phone calls. There were reports that he'd been offered to Juventus, which is a big deal because in his famous interview at Chelsea, when he was still at Chelsea, he was interviewed for Sky Italia. He said 5 times, it's like, Romelu in the Garden of Gethsemane, 5 times he denied Juventus that he would ever go there. And I think that was always going to be improbable for many reasons, not least Dusan Vlahovic. But so Inter just, they did a 180 degree. They said, all right, screw this. We're not pursuing this any further. Chelsea still have this problem on their hands in the sense that, the amortized value of Lukaku on their books is something like 65 million euros, and he earns enormous wages. And let's face it, there aren't a bunch of clubs queuing up to sign Lukaku. This is why it makes very, very little sense to me. We know that he was going to take a pay cut, in exchange for more years if he'd gone to Inter. He'd always said he was so happy there. I don't buy this thing that just because you're on the bench for the Champions League final initially, when you know that the guy who starts in your place is 39 years old or roundabout, and you know that because Inzaghi's done it all season, he's going to make a substitution roundabout the hour mark you're going to play, and you're coming off injury, you're having a good season. I don't buy that. Romelu Lukaku's too intelligent a man for something like that. I think there's got to be something else going on here that we're not aware of.
But still, you know how professional footballers are, Shaka.
Yeah.
Even if you're knowing you're going to come on in the 60th minute, you're still not going to be happy you're not starting.
To Gab's point, if I'm Romelu Lukaku, I'm upset if I don't start in the big games as a player. And I totally get that. I sympathize with that. The disconnect for me here is Romelu Lukaku, given that unhappy spell at Chelsea, goes to Inter, seems to be enjoying his football, is key to whatever it is Inter have going on and their relative successes. Surely you have to appreciate that. And again, to Gab's point, if you do an interview and say, you are adamant that I am not going to such and such a club, and while yesterday's promises aren't necessarily today's truths, I feel if you are that adamant about saying something publicly in that way, you have to stand by it. So unless it's Saudi Arabia who just have an offer on the table that's just so big that he's prepared to put the possibility of going to Inter in serious jeopardy. We'll call it that for now. I don't understand Lukaku's actions.
Surely this is down to Inter. If there was an agreement in place for Lukaku to go to Inter, then they didn't honour it, then surely Lukaku's got every right to look anywhere, regardless of whether it's Juventus or anywhere else. And again, if you're Inter, right at the get-go, you go, look, we're going to get this done. We're going to try and save some money. We're going to try and not pay what we said we would, but don't you worry. You're going to be playing with us. And that kills everything.
But that's what they did, Stevie. Yeah. I mean, to be clear, in Inter's defense here, that's exactly what they told Lukaku. They said, be patient, we'll get this done. They got it done. They had the deal with Chelsea. The reason they were trying to get him on the phone was for him to basically go and sign the paperwork that would make him an Inter player. So they got to that point. And this is why they're so nonplussed. And when this happened, there's all these theories and...
Hold on. I need to clean my ears out here. I thought you just said that although there was an agreement, They tried to get out of what they were saying as far as the money was concerned.
But eventually they reached the agreement with Chelsea.
They have an agreement with Chelsea.
Yeah,
they had an agreement with Chelsea, and now calling him. But
Hold on a second.
yeah, clear the other ear out.
Get the other one as well.
Maybe that's what was going on with Lukaku because they weren't answering the phone, Stevie.
Ringo was off.
Yeah.
That's if Ringo was off.
But for me, the reason I don't buy this whole thing about the Champions League final is, first of all, it's certainly not in Simone Inzaghi's nature to be. I mean, he is very much a player's coach. But secondly, the guy who kept you on the bench is now gone. Edin Dzeko is now in Turkey. So Inter are going to spend what for them is an enormous amount of money on you. There's no other big target man center forward who can take your place. That's not what Marcus Thuram does. So the road is clear for you for the next 2-3 years for you to play at a club and in a city that you say you love. So I don't buy this idea that and also he's upset that he doesn't start on June 10th, then forgets about it, then tells his agent, yeah, go ahead, get me back to Inter, and then remembers in mid-July that he was upset, and so he stops answering his phone. I don't buy that for 1 second. I want to hear Romelu Lukaku's side of the story. I think we owe it to him before we kind of decide to throw him under the bus.
Football players, generally, they're always an exception, but football players understand the sort of situation Lukaku found himself in with Dzeko playing before him is absolutely the easiest thing to accept as a player because the team was flying.
Yeah.
So as a player, when you're out and you try to get back in and the team's winning and the team's flying and they've reached the Champions League final without you, I mean, there are very few players who are going to turn around and go, I don't care, you need to play me. We absolutely understand in a situation like that why Dzeko would play before Lukaku. So I'm with Gab 100%. There's no way that this is all about that. Absolutely.
Especially when, with all the love in the world, and I love Lukaku, he comes on and he misses 2 very clear-cut chances
that's what he does.
in that final on top of that. So, yeah.
So where will he land if this all is to be believed that this not is going ahead? Because the talk is that it is only Juve or Saudi Arabia, and it's all going to be dependent if Juve can get rid of Dusan Vlahovic as well.
Yeah, so this Juve Dusan Vlahovic to me seems like a bunch of hot air because, first of all, again, Vlahovic coming off a horrendous season. Sure, Paris Saint-Germain are interested in everybody. They're that kind of club, right? Continuously. Yeah, if you can sell him for a ton of money, sure. But then you bring in Lukaku and his big wages and his age profile. Doesn't really fit with what Juve are trying to do right now. Saudi, he had the opportunity before when Chelsea did their rapid-fire Koulibaly and Mendy deals and the Ziyech one, which didn't go through. I don't think he has much interest there. I think there's something going on. There's also reports, he was repped for the commercial side by Rock Nation. There's also reports that relationship is soured as well. I think something is going on with him. In terms of a club where he can land, I mean, Chelsea are obviously desperate to get him somewhere. Maybe he'll have to go on loan. If they don't patch this thing up with Inter, and it looks like they won't, maybe in August they'll find a club who needs a center forward, and Chelsea will have to subsidize his wages like they've done in the past. If they can't work this out, to me, that's the only alternative.
Do you think it is telling that we haven't heard from Lukaku yet?
No, not necessarily. I think at this stage of the season, players remain quiet, let their agents do whatever talkings need to be done, and they keep themselves out of it. It also kind of gives you a little bit of a buff and say, well, that's not what I said to my agent, or some kind of a disclaimer. Who believes it later on, we'll soon figure out. But I'm with Gab on Sydney on this Juventus one. It makes absolutely no sense to me to put the move to Inter at such a risk on the premise that Vlahovic will move. So you are basing your future on the possibility of Vlahovic and his team getting him out. That don't make any kind of sense to me. So I guess, as I said before, I think the only reasonable explanation here is that Saudi Arabia are just tabling or about to table an offer that he is prepared to put all that at risk for. I don't see that kind of offer coming from anyone else.